London, December 1995. Michael Caine pushed through the heavy glass doors of Romano's, the intimate Italian restaurant in Covent Garden, where he had been dining regularly for over 3 decades, feeling a mixture of nostalgia and melancholy that he hadn't anticipated when he made the reservation earlier that week. Tonight would be different from the hundreds of other evenings he had spent at his usual corner table. Tonight was Giuseppe Benedetti's final shift as head waiter, marking the end of an era that had quietly but significantly shaped Michael's understanding of dedication, dignity, and the complex relationship between dreams deferred and dreams transformed. But he couldn't have imagined that this farewell dinner would reveal secrets about Giuseppe's past that would fundamentally change his understanding of the man who had served him with such grace and professionalism for 30 years. And that what he discovered about Giuseppe's hidden life would shock him to his core while teaching him profound lessons about artistry, sacrifice, and the different ways that people can dedicate their lives to beauty and meaning. Romano's had been Michael's refuge since 1965, when he was still a relatively unknown actor struggling to establish himself in an industry that seemed designed to crush the hopes and spirits of anyone who wasn't born into privilege or possessed of extraordinary luck. In those early days, Michael had chosen Romano's not because he could afford fine dining, but because the small family-run restaurant had reasonable prices, generous portions, and a warmth that reminded him of the working-class values he had grown up with in South London. The restaurant itself was modest but elegant, with worn wooden floors, intimate lighting provided by candles on each table, and walls decorated with photographs of Rome, Venice, and the Italian countryside that gave diners the feeling of being transported to a different world. The menu featured traditional Italian dishes prepared with care and authenticity by the Benedetti family, who had opened the restaurant in 1963 after immigrating to London from Naples. But what had kept Michael returning to Romano's for 3 decades wasn't just the food or the atmosphere. It was Giuseppe Benedetti, the eldest son of the family, who had worked as head waiter since the restaurant's opening, and who had provided Michael with a level of service, attention, and quiet companionship that went far beyond the usual relationship between customer and server. Giuseppe was a man of perhaps 70, tall and distinguished despite his advancing age, with silver hair that he kept impeccably groomed, and in bearing that suggested refinement and education that seemed unusual for someone working in the service industry. His English was flawless but carried the musical accent of his native Italy, and his knowledge of food, wine, and culture was extensive enough to engage in sophisticated conversations with the artists, writers, and intellectuals who frequented Romano's. From Michael's earliest visits to the restaurant, Giuseppe had treated him with a respect and attention that had nothing to do with his fame or status. In 1965, when Michael was just another struggling actor hoping for his big break, Giuseppe had remembered his preferences, engaged him in thoughtful conversation, and created an atmosphere of warmth and acceptance that had made Romano's feel like a second home. Mr. Micklewhite, Giuseppe had always called him, using Michael's real name rather than his stage name. Your usual table is ready. Over the years, as Michael's career flourished and he became one of Britain's most recognizable actors, Giuseppe's treatment of him had remained consistent, professional, warm, and personal without being intrusive. Giuseppe seemed to understand that celebrities needed places where they could simply be themselves, free from the pressures and expectations that came with public recognition. Tonight, as Michael entered Romano's for Giuseppe's farewell dinner, he was greeted by the familiar sight of the elderly waiter moving gracefully between tables, attending to customers with the same care and attention he had provided for over 30 years. But there was something different about Giuseppe tonight. A wistfulness in his expression, a slower pace to his movements, as if he was savoring each interaction and trying to memorize details that he would soon leave behind. Mr. Micklewhite, Giuseppe said as he approached Michael's table, "Welcome. It is so good of you to come on my last evening." Michael stood and embraced Giuseppe warmly, a gesture that would have been unthinkable in their early relationship, but that had evolved naturally over the decades as mutual respect had deepened into genuine affection. "Giuseppe, I wouldn't miss this for the world," Michael said. "You've been such an important part of my life for so many years. I wanted to make sure I said goodbye properly." Giuseppe's eyes grew misty at Michael's words, and he placed his hand on Michael's shoulder. "You have been very good to me, Mr. Micklewhite. Very loyal. It has meant more than you know." As Giuseppe poured Michael's usual wine and recommended the evening specials, Michael found himself studying the man who had been a constant presence in his life for 3 decades. He realized that despite their regular interactions over all these years, he knew very little about Giuseppe's life outside the restaurant, his background before coming to London, or his dreams and aspirations beyond providing excellent service to Romano's customers. "Giuseppe," Michael said as the waiter prepared to attend to other tables, "when you have a moment later tonight, I'd love to hear more about your plans for retirement. What will you do with all your newfound free time?" Giuseppe's expression grew thoughtful, and he nodded slowly. "Yes, perhaps later we can talk. There are some things, some stories I have never told, but tonight might be the right time for sharing." As the evening progressed, Michael enjoyed a leisurely meal while observing Giuseppe's interactions with other customers. He noticed things he had never paid attention to before. The way Giuseppe hummed softly while polishing glasses, the careful attention he paid to the classical music playing in the background, and the evident pleasure he took in discussing wine pairings and the finer points of Italian cuisine. Around 10 o'clock, as the dinner rush subsided and most customers had departed, Giuseppe approached Michael's table with a bottle of expensive wine and 2 glasses. "Mr. Micklewhite, if you have time, perhaps you would join me in a toast to the end of an era." Michael gestured to the chair across from him, and Giuseppe sat down with obvious relief, his professional demeanor relaxing into something more personal and intimate. 32 years, Giuseppe said as he poured the wine. 32 years in this restaurant, serving people, watching lives unfold, being part of London's story in this small way. They raised their glasses and drank in companionable silence for a moment. "Giuseppe," Michael said, "in all these years I've never really asked about your life before Romano's. What brought you to London? What did you do in Italy before your family opened the restaurant?" Giuseppe set down his wine glass and was quiet for a long moment, clearly debating how much of his story to share. "That is a long story, Mr. Micklewhite, and perhaps a sad one." "I have time," Michael said gently, "and I'd be honored to hear it." Giuseppe took a deep breath and began. "In Italy, before I came to London, I was not a waiter. I was an opera singer. A tenor. I performed at Scala, at the Rome Opera House, at theaters throughout Europe. For 15 years, from 1950 to 1965, I had what you might call a successful career." Michael was stunned by this revelation. Giuseppe, this quiet, dignified waiter who had served him for 30 years, had been an opera singer performing at the most prestigious venues in Europe. "Giuseppe, that's incredible. What happened? Why did you give up singing?" Giuseppe's expression grew painful, and Michael could see that this was not an easy story to tell. "In 1963, I was performing in Tosca at La Scala. It was opening night of the season, and there were critics from all over Europe in the audience. I had been struggling with some vocal problems for months. Nothing serious, I thought, just fatigue from a demanding schedule." Giuseppe paused to sip his wine before continuing. "In the third act, during Cavaradosi's final aria, my voice broke. Not just cracked, but completely failed. I could not finish the performance. It was the most humiliating moment of my professional life." Michael felt a profound sadness for Giuseppe's trauma and embarrassment. "I saw doctors, specialists, voice coaches, tried every treatment available. But something had been damaged, perhaps from years of improper technique, perhaps from pushing too hard. My voice was never the same. I could no longer perform at the level required for professional opera. Giuseppe, I'm so sorry. That must have been devastating. It was the end of everything I had worked for since I was a boy. Everything I had dreamed of, everything I was, gone in one moment on stage at La Scala." Giuseppe looked around the restaurant with obvious affection. "My family had already decided to immigrate to London and open Romano's. My younger brothers had never been interested in music. They wanted to work with food, to build something with their hands. When my singing career ended, I joined them here. I thought it would be temporary, just until I figured out what to do with the rest of my life. But you stayed for 32 years. I stayed because I discovered something unexpected. Service, done well and with care, is its own kind of performance. Taking care of people, creating experiences that bring them joy and comfort, making them feel valued and welcomance, this became my new art form." Michael was moved by Giuseppe's ability to find meaning and purpose in his new life after such a devastating loss. Giuseppe, in all these years have you missed singing? Have you regretted the choice to stay in the restaurant business? Giuseppe smiled, and for the first time that evening, his expression was completely peaceful. I have missed singing every single day. But you know what I discovered, Mr. Micklewhite? Watching you all these years, following your career, seeing how you approached your craft with such dedication and intelligence, it reminded me why I fell in love with performance in the first place. Michael was surprised by this statement. You followed my career? Very closely. I saw every film, read every review, watched every television appearance. In some strange way, watching your success allowed me to stay connected to the world of professional artistry that I had lost. Giuseppe leaned forward, his voice becoming more animated. You see, Mr. Micklewhite, when I lost my voice, I thought I had lost my connection to art, to beauty, to the thing that made life meaningful. But observing your work over these decades, seeing how you brought truth and depth to every role, how you never lost your integrity or your commitment to the craft, this kept the artistic part of my soul alive. Michael was profoundly moved by the realization that his career had provided this kind of vicarious artistic fulfillment for Giuseppe. In a way, Giuseppe continued, serving you became my way of serving art. Every time you came to Romano's, especially after completing a film or during difficult periods in your career, I felt like I was taking care of someone who was carrying forward the values and dedication that I had once tried to bring to my own artistic work. Michael felt tears beginning to form in his eyes as he absorbed the depth of Giuseppe's story and the unexpected role his own career had played in Giuseppe's life. Giuseppe, I had no idea. I'm honored, but also heartbroken that you carried this loss alone for so many years. It was not a burden, Mr. Micklewhite. It was a gift. Your success became my success. Your artistic integrity became my inspiration. In some small way, I remained part of the world I had loved and lost. They sat in contemplative silence for several minutes, both men processing the emotional weight of Giuseppe's revelation. Giuseppe, Michael said finally, do you still sing, even just for yourself? Giuseppe nodded slowly. Sometimes late at night when the restaurant is closed and I am here alone, I practice scales, work on arias that I once performed professionally. My voice is not what it was, but there is still music in it. Would you? Michael hesitated, not wanting to cause Giuseppe pain by asking too much. Would you sing something now? For me? As a farewell gift? Giuseppe looked surprised by the request, then thoughtful, then determined. Yes, he said quietly. I think tonight is the right time. Giuseppe stood and moved to the center of the small restaurant. The lighting was dim, the atmosphere intimate, and the space had the acoustic qualities that made conversation carry clearly throughout the room. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to sing Nessun Dorma from Turandot, the aria that had once been one of his signature pieces. Michael had heard the aria performed hundreds of times by professional opera singers, but he had never heard it sung with such emotional depth and personal meaning. Giuseppe's voice, while no longer possessing the power and range required for professional performance, carried a warmth, maturity, and profound understanding of the music that came from decades of living with both triumph and loss. As Giuseppe sang the famous final lines, Vincerò, Vincerò, his voice soared with a passion and conviction that filled the empty restaurant with beauty and brought Michael to tears. When the performance ended, both men stood in the silence that followed, deeply moved by what had just transpired. Giuseppe, Michael said, his voice thick with emotion, that was extraordinary. Thank you. Giuseppe wiped away his own tears and smiled. Thank you for asking. I had not sung for an audience, even an audience of one, in over 30 years. It felt healing. Michael realized that he couldn't let this evening and Giuseppe's story end with just a private moment in an empty restaurant. Giuseppe, I want to do something for you. I want to organize a proper farewell celebration, something that honors not just your years of service to Romano's, but your artistic achievements and the beauty you've brought to so many lives. Giuseppe looked uncertain. Mr. Micklewhite, that is very kind, but I am just a waiter retiring. There is no need for celebrations. No, Michael said firmly. You are an artist who has lived 2 extraordinary careers. The world should know your story. 2 weeks later, Michael had organized an evening at a small concert hall in Covent Garden, not far from Romano's. He had invited many of Giuseppe's regular customers from the restaurant, along with friends from the entertainment industry and members of London's Italian community. The evening was billed as a celebration of Giuseppe Benedetti, artist and friend, and featured performances by professional opera singers interspersed with testimonials from people whose lives Giuseppe had touched through his years of service. Michael served as the evening's host, telling Giuseppe's story and explaining how the discovery of Giuseppe's artistic background had deepened his appreciation for the dignity and purpose that could be found in any form of dedicated service. Giuseppe taught me that artistry isn't just about public recognition or professional success, Michael told the audience. It's about bringing beauty, care, and excellence to whatever work you choose to do, and about finding ways to stay connected to the things that make life meaningful, even when circumstances force you to take a different path. The evening's climax came when Giuseppe, encouraged by the warmth of the audience and the supportive presence of friends and admirers, performed Nessun Dorma once again, this time for an audience of over 200 people who gave him a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Many audience members later said it was one of the most moving performances they had ever witnessed, not because of technical perfection, but because of the courage, dignity, and emotional authenticity that Giuseppe brought to his singing. After the concert, Giuseppe was approached by several representatives from London's opera and arts communities, including the director of a small opera company who invited him to work as a vocal coach and consultant for young singers. "Your experience and wisdom would be invaluable to artists who are just beginning their careers," the director explained. "You understand both the technical and emotional demands of professional singing, and you've learned how to find fulfillment and purpose even when your original dreams don't unfold as planned." Giuseppe accepted the position, beginning a new chapter in his life that allowed him to remain connected to the world of opera while sharing his knowledge and experience with the next generation of singers. Michael continued to visit Romano's regularly, even after Giuseppe's retirement, but he also maintained a close personal friendship with Giuseppe that enriched both of their lives. "Giuseppe taught me that there are many ways to live an artistic life," Michael reflected years later. "He showed me that losing one dream doesn't mean losing your connection to beauty and meaning. Sometimes it means finding new ways to serve the things you love." Giuseppe's story became an inspiration to many people in London's arts community, particularly those who had experienced setbacks or career transitions. His example demonstrated that artistic passion and dedication could find expression in unexpected ways, and that a life devoted to service could be as fulfilling as one devoted to public performance. The friendship between Michael and Giuseppe also illustrated the profound connections that can develop between people when professional relationships are built on mutual respect, consistency, and genuine care for each other's well-being. When Giuseppe died peacefully in 2008, at the age of 83, Michael delivered the eulogy at his funeral, celebrating both his artistic achievements and his decades of dedicated service to the Romano's community. "Giuseppe was a teacher, though he never called himself one," Michael said at the funeral. "He taught me about dignity, about finding purpose in whatever work you do, and about the many different ways that people can dedicate their lives to creating beauty and meaning in the world." Today, a small plaque near the entrance to Romano's honors Giuseppe's memory and his contributions to the restaurant and the community it served. The restaurant continues to operate under the management of Giuseppe's younger brothers and their children, maintaining the tradition of warmth and excellence that Giuseppe helped establish. When Michael Caine met the old waiter who had served him for 30 years, he thought he was simply saying goodbye to a valued employee who had provided excellent service throughout his career. Instead, he discovered a fellow artist whose story of loss, adaptation, and renewed purpose taught him profound lessons about resilience, the many forms that artistic dedication can take, and the unexpected ways that lives can intersect to provide meaning and inspiration across decades of shared experience. Giuseppe's hidden life as a former opera singer shocked Michael not just because of the dramatic contrast between his two careers, but because of the grace and dignity with which he had transformed personal devastation into a new form of service and artistry, proving that the human capacity for reinvention and purpose can flourish even after the most painful losses. But the impact of Giuseppe's story extended far beyond his relationship with Michael, influencing everyone who learned about his journey from celebrated opera singer to devoted waiter and finally to mentor for young artists seeking their own paths in the world of performance. The evening that Michael organized to honor Giuseppe became legendary in London's arts community, not just because of the moving performance Giuseppe delivered, but because it challenged conventional ideas about success, failure, and the different ways that people can contribute to the world of art and culture. Giuseppe's story made us all reconsider what it means to have an artistic career, reflected Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a professor of music history at the Royal College of Music who attended the celebration. He demonstrated that artistry isn't just about public recognition or commercial success, it's about maintaining a connection to beauty and excellence regardless of the circumstances you face. The response to Giuseppe's performance that night led to numerous opportunities for him to share his experience and wisdom with others in London's opera community. Young singers began seeking him out for coaching and mentorship, drawn not just by his technical knowledge, but by his unique perspective on resilience and adaptation in the face of career setbacks. Giuseppe understood both sides of an artistic career, explained tenor David Williams, who studied with Giuseppe for 3 years after the tribute concert. He knew what it felt like to perform at the highest levels, but he also understood how to find meaning and purpose when your original dreams don't unfold as planned. Giuseppe's teaching methods incorporated lessons drawn from both his performing and service careers, emphasizing the importance of dedication, attention to detail, and genuine care for others, whether audiences, customers, or students. He taught me that every performance, whether on stage or in daily life, is an opportunity to create something beautiful for other people, said soprano Maria Rodriguez, another of Giuseppe's students. He showed us that the skills required for excellent service, empathy, observation, anticipation of others' needs, are also essential for great artistic performance. The revelation of Giuseppe's background also transformed how regular customers viewed their experiences at Romano's. Many people who had dined at the restaurant for years began to understand that they had been receiving service from someone whose understanding of hospitality and presentation had been refined by decades of professional performance training. Suddenly, everything made sense, said Margaret Collins, a literary agent who had been dining at Romano's since the 1970s. Giuseppe's perfect timing, his ability to read the mood of a room, his instinct for creating exactly the right atmosphere, these weren't just natural talents. They were skills honed through years of professional performance. Romano's itself became something of a pilgrimage site for people in London's arts community who wanted to experience the restaurant where Giuseppe had served, and to understand how he had transformed a place of business into a venue for creating meaningful human connections. The restaurant's owners, Giuseppe's younger brothers, decided to honor his legacy by establishing the Giuseppe Benedetti Performance Fund, which provided financial assistance to young opera singers facing career challenges or transitions. The fund was supported by contributions from Romano's customers and members of London's arts community who had been inspired by Giuseppe's story. Giuseppe taught us that supporting artists means more than just buying tickets to performances, explained restaurant owner Antonio Benedetti. It means understanding that artistic careers are unpredictable and that talented people sometimes need help finding new ways to pursue their passion for beauty and excellence. Michael's ongoing friendship with Giuseppe also provided both men with insights into the parallels between their respective careers and the challenges faced by all professional artists in maintaining artistic integrity while achieving commercial success. Giuseppe helped me understand that my responsibility as an actor extended beyond just delivering good performances, Michael reflected. He showed me that artists have an obligation to support each other, to create opportunities for others to pursue their artistic dreams, and to demonstrate that artistic values can be expressed through any form of dedicated work. This understanding influenced Michael's approach to choosing roles and using his influence in the entertainment industry, leading him to support projects that celebrated artistic dedication and the diverse ways that people could contribute to cultural life. Giuseppe's work as a voice coach and mentor continued until just a few years before his death, and his influence on the young singers he taught extended far beyond technical instruction. Many of his students credited him with helping them develop not just vocal skills but emotional resilience and a mature understanding of what it meant to pursue an artistic career. Giuseppe taught us that success in the arts isn't just about talent or opportunity, said baritone James Morrison, who went on to have a distinguished international career after studying with Giuseppe. It's about maintaining your integrity, supporting your fellow artists, and finding ways to create beauty and meaning regardless of the circumstances you face. The annual Giuseppe Benedetti Memorial Scholarship became one of the most prestigious awards for young opera singers in the UK, specifically designed to support artists who demonstrated not just vocal ability but the character traits that Giuseppe had exemplified throughout his life: humility and commitment to serving others through their art. Michael served on the scholarship selection committee for over a decade, using his experience with Giuseppe to help identify young artists who showed promise not just as performers, but as people who understood the deeper purposes and responsibilities of artistic careers. "Giuseppe taught me what to look for in young artists," Michael explained. "Technical skill is important, but character is essential. The artists who make lasting contributions are those who understand that their gifts are meant to be shared and that their success creates obligations to help others." The scholarship recipients often spoke about how Giuseppe's story influenced their own approach to their careers, providing a model for maintaining artistic passion and finding purpose even when facing setbacks or disappointments. The transformation of Romano's into a gathering place for London's arts community also created opportunities for informal mentorship and collaboration among artists from different generations and disciplines. Young performers would seek out tables near where Giuseppe had worked, hoping to absorb some of the wisdom and dedication that had made him legendary among those who knew his story. Romano's became a place where you could feel connected to a tradition of artistic dedication that went beyond any single performance or career, observed playwright Helen Carter, who frequently dined at the restaurant during the late 1990s. Giuseppe's presence, even after his retirement, reminded everyone that artistry was about more than individual achievement. It was about contributing to something larger and more enduring. The influence of Giuseppe's example extended beyond the arts community to inspire people in other professions who were dealing with career transitions, setbacks, or the need to find new sources of meaning and purpose in their work. Giuseppe's story became a touchstone for anyone who had experienced professional disappointment or needed to reinvent themselves, said career counselor Dr. Patricia Williams. He proved that skills and values developed in one context could be transferred to create excellence and fulfillment in completely different circumstances. Business schools and professional development programs began using Giuseppe's story as a case study in resilience, adaptation, and the importance of maintaining core values while navigating career changes. The legacy of Giuseppe's relationship with Michael also highlighted the profound connections that could develop when professional relationships were built on consistent mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's well-being. Their friendship demonstrated how mentorship and support could flow in both directions, observed relationship counselor Dr. Robert Thompson. Michael provided Giuseppe with recognition and opportunities, but Giuseppe provided Michael with insights into dedication, service, and finding meaning in daily work that influenced his entire approach to his career and life. The annual memorial concert held in Giuseppe's honor continued for many years, featuring performances by young singers he had mentored. These concerts raised funds for the scholarship program while celebrating the values Giuseppe had embodied. Michael's participation in these memorial events kept Giuseppe's story alive for new generations of artists, and reminded audiences that artistic careers could take many forms when pursued with integrity and dedication. Giuseppe's legacy reminds us that every person we encounter might have extraordinary stories, Michael said at the memorial concert. "He taught me to approach every relationship with curiosity and respect." Today, Romano's continues to operate with the same commitment to excellence that Giuseppe exemplified. A photograph near the entrance shows him in his waiter's attire alongside an image from his opera days, reminding visitors that everyone has multiple dimensions. When Michael Caine said goodbye to his waiter of 30 years, he discovered that Giuseppe Benedetti was much more than a devoted server. He was a fellow artist whose journey through triumph, loss, and renewal provided lessons in resilience, dignity, and the countless ways people can dedicate their lives to creating beauty and meaning in the world.